Welcome. My name is Aprille Walker, and welcome to the Grainger studio and to this chat. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that is really near and dear to my heart because it's something I've been working very hard on. And I think it's something that a lot of us struggle with, particularly this time of year or all year long, but particularly when we're working with resolutions or intention setting. And when we set our intentions and our resolutions, we need something as a support network to help get us a little bit deeper, to help move us a little bit deeper, and to help support us as we manifest our intentions and live more fulfilling lives. So, to that end, we're going to be talking about boundaries. And I have invited life coach Jenny Grainger to join us to talk about a little bit more in depth about what boundaries are and how they help serve us and how they can help support us and all of those things. So welcome, Jenny. So glad to have you join us today.
Thank you so much, Aprille. It's lovely to be here and good to be here on your channel. It's lovely. It's a gift. Thank you.
So Jenny, let's start with this. Most basic question. What is a boundary and why do we need them?
Well, I suppose for me, boundaries are the invisible lines that sort of protect us. They're there to keep us safe. They're there to reflect our own levels of self-respect and self-esteem. We tend to attract others with similar self-respect and similar self-esteem. So boundaries, having good, healthy boundaries will help to increase your energy levels because you won't constantly be feeling drained by people who are overstepping your boundaries all the time. They help to eradicate fear from your life. They encourage honest, open communication with others. And they allow, most importantly for me anyway, they allow emotional, spiritual, and personal growth to take place. Without having really healthy boundaries in place, so much of it, to me, it almost feels like my energy is kind of disappearing out from me, as opposed to with good, healthy boundaries, and I can claim my own energy and keep it safe and be with myself much more.
I love that. I love that boundaries are something that really helps support us in so many aspects of our life, from communication to feeling safe and comfortable to managing our energy better. And I know that all of us probably want to focus on how we have our energy going out and keeping what we need for ourselves. It's something I really try to focus on in practices. So boundaries are really important. They really help support us in everything that we do, I think. What kinds of boundaries are there?
Well, I kind of break it down into, let me see, I think probably about 8 different categories of boundaries. So I just run through them quickly. We've got physical boundaries. So, for instance, one of my physical boundaries is I don't tolerate physical abuse from someone else. We have emotional boundaries. One of mine is I don't tolerate intimidation arising from anger or from someone else being reactive. Mental boundaries. I don't tolerate lies. Sexual boundaries. I don't tolerate sexual advances from anyone else apart from my partner. Spiritual or religious boundaries, like, for instance, not tolerating other people scoffing at my personal beliefs, each to their own. I don't scoff at you, you don't scoff at me. Creative boundaries, for instance, around plagiarism could be a creative boundary if you're a writer. Financial boundaries, really important, especially in this period that we're in, sort of economic recession, and having those boundaries in terms of how you deal with other people with your finances, but also for yourself. All these are also really about yourself. And the final one is professional boundaries then, so for instance, for me as a life coach, I expect my clients to be punctual. That's one thing. Okay, simple. So you can see with all of these that they are all really indicators of my level of self-respect and the respect that I expect to receive from someone else.
Excellent, excellent. I love all those because I like looking at each one of them and saying, is this a physical boundary I'm setting? Is this an emotional boundary setting? Is this a professional boundary I'm setting? Is this something that I want to stand on? My daughter always refers to it as this the hill you want to stand on. Are you willing to let some of it go? Do you want to stand a little higher on the hill or midway through the hill or down at the very bottom? So I feel like it's sort of like a boundary field for me with a little hill in it. And I think that boundaries are so unique to each person. There's such a personal preferences and what you're comfortable with. So somebody who's okay with something else, just because they're okay with it in their relationships doesn't mean in your relationship with them you necessarily are going to
Yeah,
feel that same comfort that your boundary is exactly the same. And I think that's where we run into maybe some
we
communication problems, some
yeah,
enforcement
exactly.
problems.
There's an assumption that that your boundaries are going to be the same as mine. And I've a great example was my previous marriage. My sister-in-law and she and I were great friends. Her house was open door. You arrived up at the house, you just walk in, no problem. Everybody's just very relaxed about that. I'm not like that. I like to know if somebody's arriving, or at least for a knock on the door, at least. So, it took us a while. It took me, I remember, this is about 20 years ago or something. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have this conversation with her about this boundary because she keeps just walking into my house and I don't like it. And it was a really big deal for me at that stage, because I was just really starting to work on my own personal development and my own growth and starting to sort of build some strong self-respect. So, yeah, we can just assume. And then with the communication of the boundaries, and if we don't actually communicate it, what we're doing is we're assuming that the other person is a mind reader.
Mhm.
I was like, well, they should know that that's annoying for me. No, well, they can't just, you can't should. It's just not going to work that way. You're actually going to have to communicate it. So there really are, there's about 3 or 4 steps, I think, with boundaries. The first one is identifying what the boundary is. And the easiest way to do that, in my experience, and with working with lots of clients over the years, is by really feeling into what's going on for you. I mean, we all know what it feels like when someone's overstepped the boundary, and it feels different for everybody. For me personally, it usually feels like either I've been kicked in the stomach, or someone's got my stomach and they're kind of squeezing it. There's that's quite intense for me. Or, you might feel like you want to push the other person away. There's actually a physical reaction to it. So we can be aware of that and identify, okay, somebody has this is a boundary issue. This person has overstepped my boundary. My mind's obsessing about it, about what I want to say to them. And so that's really the first step, is identifying, okay, what is the boundary, and what is the boundary that I need to set around that. So, for example, your partner annoys you. You've been in a long-term relationship for a long time, for 10 years, and your partner does something consistently that annoys you. You're probably not going to say, right, pack your bags the next time they do it. But you are going to have to say, okay, well, I'm going to have to leave the room. If you continue to do that or speak to me in that way, I need to leave the room. I need to do something. So there needs to be quite a bit of thought put into what your boundary actually is. Are you saying, no, you're no longer my friend, I don't want to ever see you again? Or are you saying, okay, I need you to knock on the door before coming into my house? It's that simple. So that's really important. Identify what the boundary is that you want to set, how it feels when when someone oversteps your boundaries, and then also, really important, the benefit of the new boundary. How are you going to feel? And this comes back to our sort of New Year's intentions and resolutions and things. How are you going to feel when this new boundary is in place and you've communicated it clearly? What's that actually going to do for you? That's like the carrot to allow you to take the final step, which is the communication of the boundary. And that used to be terrifying for me as someone who's a people pleaser. I'm really, really scared of communicating those healthy boundaries with people. But somebody said to me, I think it was probably my first life coach myself about 25 years ago, said to me, there's a big difference between confrontation and open and honest communication. And all we're talking about here is open and honest communication, telling somebody how you feel and what you expect in the future instead of what's continuing to happen. So that was a long-winded answer, I'm sure. It was useful.
And I think that fits in with, I always feel like when I'm setting boundaries that in my mind, I make this big thing where they're going to be really upset and they're going to be really angry. And I convince myself that this boundary is so important to me, that it's something that really is affecting me, that it probably, when I say something or communicate my boundary or set that boundary, it's going to be really offend someone else. And the reality is part of the time, they don't care. Maybe some of the time they will, but some of the time they're just like, oh, okay. And I've made it up in my mind as like this big conversation I'm going
Yes.
to have with someone to clarify everything. And it's going to really upset someone and it's going to damage the relationship. And the reality is they're really just happy to hear that you're communicating clearly and that you feel comfortable enough and respect them enough to share that information with them. And for them, it's no big deal, which
Totally.
is nice. But I always think
Yeah.
about how I make myself believe it's something huge to them, and it's to me it is huge, and that's
Yeah.
important to remember. But to them, it's probably not that big a deal. Like you're choosing to have your house more closed and having notification of someone coming into the house prior to their just walking in is really big to you,
Yeah.
but to them, it probably doesn't matter whether the doors are open and the doors are closed. It doesn't matter. They just know that in their house, that's their comfort level. And they probably don't care if it is different somewhere else. And they probably know that it's probably different for a lot of people. And so
Yeah.
I'm fine
Yeah.
with it. Yeah.
Exactly. And the people, quite often the people that you're communicating boundaries with, you know, it tends to be the people that you care about, or that you spend a lot of time with, that will really sort of push your boundaries and overstep your boundaries. And those people, specifically family, they're used to interacting with you in a certain way. So they're used to that. I always think about a bit like, it's a circle. So if that symbol for recycling with the arrows, the two, it's a circle with the arrows going around it. And it's like, this is going to continue happening. This same dance that we're doing between you overstepping my boundary and me getting angry and upset about it and not saying anything and fuming away and you doing it again, it's going to continue happening unless I take responsibility for that, and unless I identify what the issue is for me, doing my internal work, and then communicate it. This is where something like nonviolent communication comes in really, really essentially important with boundary setting. For me, if you haven't come across it, check it out. Nonviolent communication. I think it was Rosenblum, I want to say, was the
I think it's Rosenblum.
I think it is, and it's just such a wonderful communication tool to have in your toolbox, for being able to explain, what is actually emotionally happening for you, what your needs are, and what you would like to see happening in the future. And a bit like you, I used to get myself so worked up. Oh my God, I'm going to have to say this to this person. But actually, especially if you use nonviolent communication, or you just take a pause and you journal and you work out, do your inner work to find out what's actually going on for you and communicate from that place, then the other person, most often people want to please each other. People want to make each other happy. So they don't want to make each other unhappy. Normally, I know there's a few exceptions to the rules, but we try not to spend too much time with those people either. That's also a good boundary to have too.
Yes.
And it becomes even more challenging. And I know you and I have talked about this. It can become more challenging as well if you're naturally an empath, as you and I are. And I think probably a lot of people who are watching your channel, a lot of people will be empaths and will know what that dynamic is like. If you enter into a narcissistic empath relationship, then this is where you need boundaries. You really, really do. As an empath, you need, and it can be boundaries around what you're watching on the news or how much news you're taking in because of what that's doing to your system. And so they can be boundaries for yourself, boundaries around how much time you spend on social media, how much money you spend, who you spend time with. I mean, I have a very, very dear friend who I love very much, but I know I have to have a boundary around the amount of time I spend with her, because I just can't do any more than that. It doesn't mean that I don't love her, and I do enjoy the time, but I know if I do, it's a little bit like going to spend time with my family. I know what my limit is. Love you. I'm very happy to spend a few days with you, but no, 2 weeks, no. That's we've overstepped the boundary at that stage.
And some people are really like, some people refer to them as energy vampires. I don't want to be that cruel, but there are people that are just really energy. They're almost like a black hole.
Yeah.
And you love them and they're your friends and you love spending time with them, but it has to be a very limited amount of time, because I have someone in my life right now that I cannot do more than 2 hours with this person.
Yes.
because I come home and I'm just drained of energy. I just feel really tired. I mean, I had a great time with them. I enjoy their company. I love them very much, but my energy is just gone from just walking on eggshells on certain topics and working around different things and the conversations that we have. And so I have to be very mindful of how I set up appointments or time
Yes,
spent with this person and say, we can only do, I'm only available for this amount of time. And,
exactly.
as someone who's sort of an introvert, I
Mhm.
find myself energetically drained with larger groups of people or having to keep up conversations or maintain a relationship. And so I really kind of space those out. I feel like sometimes I'm a bad friend, but then I realize I'm really doing what's best for me. And that's the best thing that works for me, is to space those friendship visits or time with them out a little bit more, instead of putting them, like a bunch of them. Some people want to be with, kind of hang out for like 2 or 3 times a week for a few hours each
Yeah.
time. I can't do that.
Yes,
And so
yes.
I've been very quiet and calm and said, I just can't, I'm not available this time, this part of this week. How about we do this a week or two out? I'll set, you know, things to come, and so that they feel more comfortable. And I think that also feeds into that nonviolent communication, is taking responsibility.
Mhm,
And instead of saying, hey, you're demanding too much from me, I'm saying, you know what, I'm an introvert. And
mhm.
it's difficult for me energetically to have enough energy to share with everybody. And so, I'm honoring my energy and your energy. And I want, when I'm with you, to be a really special time. And if I'm energetically drained, that's not available. So I take responsibility and say, this is my perspective, my view. This is how I feel. This is how I see the situation. And this is what I need to
Mhm.
be around you, be with you, be in companionship with you. Um, and exactly like you said, same thing to myself. When I say, how much energy do I have? And when I wake up each morning, I ask myself, how much energy do I have today? And I do like a little scan to see what's going on, because it may have been that yesterday somebody or something needed a lot of my energy. And today I'm
Mhm.
still kind of recovering.
That's
And
right.
so, how much do I have? How much do I have to share? And how much am I willing to share? It's not that I have to just give all my energy away. It's that I want to be mindful of balanced energy, where I
Mhm.
want to be mindful of how my energy is used and given away and kept, and not under the
Yes.
assumption that just because I can do something, and you and I've talked about this, just because I can do something and someone asks for it doesn't necessarily mean that I have to do it.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the natural stance of the people pleasers. So yes, okay. Just say yes to everything. And I think it does, it takes a bit of inner work, but also maturity, I think, just in the aging process as well. There's something quite freeing about moving into menopause because you become much less likely to. Well, the people pleaser just diminishes a little bit, shall we say? Just a little bit. But and you're bringing back to a really good point, which is that you establish boundaries to protect yourself and not to control others or to blame others or make them guilty. So much, and the reason that people don't, sorry, let me get this right. People are much more likely to accept your communication of your boundary if it's done from that place of, this is about me. This is what I need, and this is what I'm able to offer, rather than, you keep doing that, you're pointing the finger at them. Nobody responds well to that at all. So if you can move away from language around blame, control, trying to shame the other person for having done whatever they're doing, then, and bring it back to, okay, this is about me. I know, I mean, I hear myself say to people quite often, I know I'm a bit weird about this, but this is how it is for me, and it's like, okay, yeah, you're weird, that's fine. I own my weirdness.
Yes, I own it. I own the realization that I'm a bit of an introvert, that
Yeah.
my energy is at a certain level, that sometimes I just need to pull back and restock and revisit something. But I own
Mhm.
that. I really do own that.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So
the
much of it
next
is
thing
to do
is,
with self-knowledge, isn't it? So
yes,
self-awareness and self-knowledge and
yes.
understanding yourself and why you're feeling drained, why, yeah, what it is about that situation or about that person that is actually draining it out of you, and why the other person that is in communication with them doesn't have that same problem,
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah.
So run us through like a basic, how would you take steps to set some boundaries in place? Or if you're someone who, when I started, I think I had zero boundaries. I said yes to everything. I said yes to everybody. I people pleased. My entire goal was to never say no, never disappoint, never upset anyone. And so a lot of us, I think, have some of that maybe going on, or we're trying to develop our boundary setting, and it can be really hard to set those steps in place. But what would be a simple way to sort of like a process that would make it easier for us to start building boundaries overall?
Overall, well, I suppose it really starts with your relationship with yourself. Again, what we were just saying there about, really starting to understand yourself and um, what it is about the situation that's making you feel uncomfortable, or tired or drained. And really, so journaling for me has been, and I know you write a lot as well, and you journal a lot. The journaling has been such a process of, self understanding, self knowledge. And then once you've really sort of understood, okay, this is what's going on, and this is the dynamic of what's going on for me in relationship to this other person. I mean, sorry, this is assuming that we're talking about an ongoing relationship, not that you're just out in a bar one night and somebody puts their hand on your ass. That's a different situation. You're not going to go away and, well, you might go away and journal about that, but you actually have to respond there and then to that one. But if it's sort of ongoing issues, ongoing boundary issues, then taking a pause for me, April, has been the best thing. I'm just seeing kitty cat paws coming up here. They remind me about pause, but it's a different type of pause. Hi, Lucy. So no, it's more about not saying yes immediately. I think this was the biggest game changer for me. So if somebody asks you, can you do this, or are you free to do this tomorrow, or whatever, I just got into a habit. It took me about a year of working really, really consciously with this, of saying, let me just check and I'll get back to you in an hour or tomorrow or whatever. I just gave myself pause for thought, and then I would go away and maybe look at my other commitments, look at my calendar, check in with myself. Okay, how am I feeling? Do I have the energy for this person? Why am I doing it? Am I doing it because I don't want to reject them, or because I'm people pleasing, or am I doing it because it's a should, or am I doing it because I really want to be with this person? So just taking that time, it can literally be a few minutes if it's a work situation. So say, for instance, you're actually in the office and you're asked to do something and you're not sure about what's going on. Take yourself off to I don't know, I was going to say the toilet. You guys don't say that in the States, do you? What do you call them?
Bathroom?
The bathroom. There you go. Sorry, I'm in France and I'm Irish, so it's very confusing. I have all these different cultural mixes. But yeah, take yourself off to the bathroom, close yourself into the cubicle, and take a few deep breaths. Check in. Okay, what's going on for me? What needs to be said? What needs to be communicated here? And just give yourself that time. We so often we just rush into unconscious, habitual, spontaneous responses, rather than just take pause. Take a pause.
I think the pause is so valuable in so many things. And I think working with you over this last year has been, I've learned the pause very carefully, to say, not immediately say, yes, I can fit that in, but say, let me look at my schedule. Let me get back to you. I'll text you, I'll call you, I'll email you, and taking a day or so to respond. And it always takes me back to Patrick Otuma's Poetry Unbound. He has a newsletter he sends out, and one of those things was about pausing and taking a moment before you answered before you answered an email, or before you answered a text, like sleeping on it overnight or taking a few hours. And I thought, wow, so much of that has changed in this time when I've been working on boundaries, is to not think that I have to respond instantly, because I used to believe I had to. Like it was a conversation on the phone, but it's not. It's a question that is not immediate. It's not an emergency. and taking that time to say, wait a day and say, you know what, I don't really want to do that. I don't feel like that. That doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And then very gently and calmly and nicely expressing that to someone and potentially offering another option.
An alternative is great. Yeah.
Yes.
Go back with an alternative that does work for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love offering alternatives because people, when they hear a no, whatever it is, they like to have something else. And so I
Mhm.
often will give something else. I'll be like, I can't do that. I can't fit that into a schedule, but I could do this. And so I offer them something that's balancing out. And that seems to work better for me. It kind of gives me a sense of accomplishment, but still without wounding anybody's feeling and taking some time to pause and think about it. And I agree, it
Mm.
takes a lot of thinking about what you do and do not like. But I always feel like for me, it's a gut thing. It's listening to
Mhm.
that intuition and saying, you walk away from a situation or a conversation and you feel like something's not right.
Yes,
Most likely something is not right.
exactly.
Something in you is saying this, something's not working for me here. And it's taking a moment just to think about, what is not working? Is it the way they said it? Is it, um, you know, the way it was presented? Is it the
Mhm.
situation overall? Is it because I'm just not feeling well, or I'm just tired and I need a break? Or asking yourself all these questions about that feeling that you have. And I have a lot of people ask me, how do you tap into intuition? I wish I could tap into my intuition. It starts with these tiny moments,
Yep,
these tiny moments
exactly.
of boundary setting, of basically saying, what do I need?
Mhm. Mhm.
What do I
That's it.
need? And what am I feeling right now? And what do I need to put in place to make myself feel comfortable and safe and supported? Because all of those things are absolutely important. You need to feel safe. You need to feel supported. You need to feel like you have a safe and comfortable space. And
Absolutely. So
you need to feel
important.
that. And you have a right to that. You do. And so once you think of it in terms of, is this an issue that's threatening that or infringing on that? Those are where you start thinking about, is this, well, how do I make adjustments to this? And I think with boundaries, something I always need to remember is that boundaries are not permanently set in stone.
No,
Don't just put a mortar
good
wall
point.
up and that's it. There will be minute adjustments along the way. Maybe that over time, that barrier, that boundary becomes a little bit more permeable because the relationship has shifted and
Mhm.
you've come to an understanding that they now are treating you in that way that is appropriate. So you don't necessarily need to have a block boundary in place. You need to have something a bit more open to that. And you need to ask yourself, is this boundary still what I need? Is
Mhm.
this still
Yeah,
supportive? Is this still a safety issue? Is this, and because that will shift. It will shift because you will change and life will change.
and they will change. The other person will change, hopefully.
They will
So if
change
it,
and the relationship will change and the
that's it.
situation will change. Everything's constantly changing. And so I always say this about intention and resolutions too, is that you're going to revisit these multiple times during the year. And so you should review your boundaries as well to see if these are still valid for you. Are they still something that you need in place? Are they still something that is very important to you? Because sometimes they will no longer be as important to you and something else will come up. And so I think setting boundaries, you start small, you ask
Mhm.
yourself that question if something feels weird. And then as you go, you kind of ask yourself, is this still a valid boundary? Is this still important to me? Is it still something that I need to focus on? And remembering to put just a little bit of energy in your boundaries. I feel like sometimes we set a boundary and we express it to someone and then we just walk away.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes,
It,
yeah,
it needs to be fed a little bit.
it's true.
Asking yourself once again, is this here for a reason? Why is it here? Does this protect my safety? Um, and just keeping that boundary open to investigation and
Yeah, yeah, and
exploration.
it's a really really valid point of very similar to yoga practice from the point of view of micro adjustments that we make in our practice. especially and the micro adjustments that the body naturally makes in a balance pose. If we're doing tree and like the ankle and the foot's going, everything's constantly adjusting to try and find the balance. So boundaries for me are so much about balance and having balanced, healthy relationships with people, and with myself. And yes, it constantly needs to be revised. And what I find quite often, so this is just a kind of word of warning for people who are maybe, if you're just starting out with working on some boundaries, quite often it's very easy to swing the other way. So swing from being possibly a complete people pleaser to, whoa, okay, I've got all these boundaries are going up now, and you can't do this and you can't do that. And it can be quite, necessary, because you're trying to find your way with it, but it can also be quite challenging for the people in your life if it all comes out at once. So I would, you said start with something small. Do start with something that's just like a day-to-day irritant annoyance. My first bit of boundary setting was with the guy who owned the corner shop where we lived. And every time I went in, he used to say to me, "Good morning, love." This was in Belfast, and they all say love. This is the kind of, "Good morning, love. Good morning, love." And I hate being called love. I mean, especially by somebody who I don't know and who definitely doesn't love me. And every day it used to really irritate me. And then eventually my coach said, "Okay, well, this is the one. Let's start with this." So it was the first time I expressed a boundary. And I went into the shop and I said, "Do you know what? I've been coming in here for 6 months and I've never introduced myself." And I put my hand across the counter and I said, "Hi, my name is Jenny." And I said, "Do you know what? I'd really love it if you called me Jenny instead of love in future." I said, "Okay, yeah, Jenny, no problem. I'm Nick," and that was that. But it was such a big deal for me, and I had to practice. So that's the other tip is, once you've worked out what it is, what the boundary is, and what you want to say, or what you think you want to say, how you want to express it, practice. Get yourself in front of the mirror. Practice until you feel comfortable. Because if it's an ongoing boundary situation where it happens regularly and it's just the way you and that person interact, then you may have to say it more than once. And you also know that it's going to happen again. So be prepared for it happening again, so that, when it does happen, you have the words that you want to use. Rather than being reactive, you can actually sit in your center, but in a very grounded place, and say, "Okay, this is the moment. Okay, and here's what I practiced," and see what happens. And as you said earlier on, quite often it's amazing how much or how little of a big deal it is, what a little deal it is to the other person. It may have been huge to you. But I love the idea. My partner Owen talks about, in fact, he's got a beautiful meditation. Maybe we could link to the meditation. I'll let you have a think about this. He's got a beautiful meditation around being in a castle. And so in the center of the castle, you've got the castle. So you've got the fortress with the rampart, or the drawbridge that goes up and down. And then inside, right in the middle of the castle somewhere, where there will be what's called the keep. And that's where the king and queen used to be taken, or the person who owned the castle used to be taken. Nobody else could get in there at all. So for me, boundaries are a little bit like that. Some boundaries, I just need the drawbridge to, okay, I'm pulling the drawbridge up a little bit. You're not coming into that bit. But then other boundaries, I'm taking myself right into the keep, and nobody's getting anywhere near me at all. The ones, if the drawbridge is going up, I'm standing up on the ramparts going, "Hello, yes, I can see you. I can still talk to you, but I'm just taking a bit of distance, and the drawbridge may come back down again." And then there's other ones where, no, that's not going to change. I'm going into the keep, and you're definitely not getting into that keep for whatever reason. So
I've actually used that meditation. It was one of those I just kind of keep reusing over and over, just a reminder that, this is my inner space, and certain people are allowed in there and certain people are not. And I'm allowed to adjust that. I can move further out into the castle, and I can move further into the castle, and I can be out on the bridge if I want to, and close it off if I want to. And this is my safe, once again, that reminder of that safe space, that safe, sacred, supportive space that you are absolutely entitled to have, and protecting that however you need to, in your own way, and setting those boundaries. And I think also with starting really small, there's a sense of relief once you've started with that small one, and you build stronger and stronger and more important ones, maybe ones that are just more intensive or more personal to you, you will start to kind of it'll be easier and easier as you take steps to enforce those. Because I remember the first one I enforced this year was to not answer my phone after 8 p.m.
Remember
And
that was
so
huge.
it was very hard because I'm used to being like at everybody's beck and call. And I just said, I can't sleep. I can't settle down. It's very upsetting. I won't check my email. I won't answer phone calls. I won't call anybody after 8 p.m. because I just really need that time to unwind and prepare for bedtime and sleep. And it was amazing how once I kind of explained to everybody why I was doing it, everybody's like, well, good for you. I should do that too. And so more people were wanting to do that. um, that was great because I was like, well, all of us will now do that. Then I don't need to necessarily enforce that boundary because everybody's doing it now, which is
Exactly.
nice. It's
Yeah.
really nice.
And the
So
other
yeah,
important point is to congratulate yourself when you do actually communicate your boundary, or when you set a boundary for yourself and you uphold it. It's so important to congratulate there, to celebrate these little mini victories, because nobody else is probably going to notice it. But it's like, yeah, give yourself a pat in the back, give yourself a treat, or maybe even have a treat in mind. So okay, well, once I get past this bit, the uncomfortable bit. And listen, that is so important as well, is that if the boundary that you need to communicate, if communicating the boundary doesn't make you feel a little nervous, then it may be that you're making it too easy, that it's not a strong enough boundary for you, so you will naturally feel a bit uncomfortable in communicating a healthy boundary, just for that moment. So that's why it's really important to have a little something, a little treat for yourself at the end of it. So, yeah, okay, when I do this, I'm going to celebrate with whatever it might be. Very important.
Yeah. And a reminder that yin is very much a supportive practice of this. I really think, I keep thinking about how yin does this for me. It makes me present. It has me tap into my awareness of my breath and my body and what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, sensations, not just physically, but emotionally in my thoughts. It asks me to pause and be still
Yeah.
with that. And it also asks me to deal with uncomfortable things that come up. Like I always tell people when
Yeah,
they come into
totally.
yin pose, I'm uncomfortable. I said, you should be. Yin poses are uncomfortable. They're not meant to be really relaxing and help you fall asleep. Yin poses are supposed to be a little bit uncomfortable. And that discomfort on the mat, in your safe space, in your quiet home, is what helps prepare you for that discomfort, and managing discomfort with a sense of non-reactiveness off the mat. So your yin
Yes.
practice helps support this in helping you be more present, be more aware, sensitive, intuition tapping in, and also to deal with any kind of discomfort that comes up. Because you're right, setting boundaries is incredibly uncomfortable. It is,
Mhm.
especially for people who are people pleasers, it is stressing, and it makes you sweaty, and it makes you hot, and it makes you
It
really
is.
uncomfortable. And once you walk up and you're about to set that boundary or call or whatever, you just feel really like you're going to be sick.
Yep.
I always makes my stomach very upset. And then afterwards, I'm just like, oh, that was so easy. And it's like this deflation. So
Well,
why was I thinking that was so hard?
and similar to yin, then, because for me, one of the beautiful things, especially when I'm doing hip openers for yin work around the hips, there's so much emotional release as well, and the space that it all creates, the space that the yin creates. So I mean, when you have your boundaries are strong and they're healthy and they're in place, you just have so much more space and more energy. You don't have, it's not clogging up. You're not obsessing in your mind about, oh, I hate it when I do that, or all that energy that goes into, not setting boundaries. It can be so much better used when you have the clear boundaries in place and your energy is just able to flow more smoothly. So yeah, yin for boundaries. Go for it.
Okay, well, I think we've covered almost everything about boundaries on this end, just to make this more reasonable. I hope that people find this helpful in sort of diving a little bit deeper into boundaries. If you are looking to dive even deeper into boundaries, I highly recommend checking out Jenny for more, and she'll give us a little information on how to contact her. But I've been working with Jenny for about a year, and really found that those setting those boundaries and giving that support and having that support system to remind me and to ask me questions has been invaluable, if nothing else. So if you are looking to dive deeper, Jenny, how do we reach you?
Ah, well, you could just go along to my website, which is jennygrainger.net. We'll put a link, I think. There'll be a link somewhere, won't there?
Sounds good.
And you'll find the email address there, and you can just pop me an email and arrange to meet up for an introductory session. And I think are we going to include a handout? I have a nice handout for people on boundaries, so we can include that. Or you can, I don't know how you want to do that, April. Do they have to email me for that?
Yes, yes. It'd be better to
Yes.
just email you and ask
Good
you for
idea.
that handout, and just a handout to kind of go along with this conversation, to just give you something to look at too, and to give you some hints and tips and techniques to help support you in setting your boundaries. So important for moving, once again, your intentions and your resolutions forward, and just living a more fulfilling life that is more supportive of you as a person, making sure you protect that safe, sacred, supportive space of you, and to help you also connect more deeply to your intuition, because when you're really listening to what your body and your mind and your heart is telling you, you're going to set boundaries that are going to be healthier for you and your relationships. You're going to build
Mm.
better relationships. You're going to continue to develop better relationships with yourself and with other people and with the world around you. So definitely check out in the description down below any details about what we're going to include with the handout and to reach Jenny. And also, if we can, we maybe include that castle link to the meditation, because that's a really wonderful one to come back to time and again from Owen. And thank you so much for joining me today. It was really lovely to have a chat with you, um, and to share more of this with the world. I know I've had another introduction to boundaries and how they are important, but this is really a little bit deeper dive into what they are, what you can do with them, how to set up steps to develop them. And I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you,
Mm.
Jenny, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I wish you all the best. Have a great day.
Thank you so much.